Welcome back to the Hockey Show, and today we are talking about the Tampa Bay Lightning, one of the 16 teams full of pros, men who have fighting their whole lives, their entire season, to bring back the most prized reward in all of sports. I'll say it, all of sports, the best trophy in existence. Lord Stanley's Cup, and the playoffs start in just 5 days from now. And the Tampa Bay Lightning are one of those teams that are looking to bring back that giant trophy and have their third parade in, 4 years? Yeah, 5 years actually. So, Tampa Bay, a team that is always so underrated. Currently, they're in the first wildcard spot of the Eastern Conference, and I feel like people underrate this team so hard, and I don't get it. For starters, I mean, just as even last 2 years ago, when they were the 3 years going in back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, they go into the finals and people are just like, whatever. They don't even get talked about. Currently, Kucherov, probably the least talked about superstar of all time, and it just is, it baffles me, because here's a little bit of a refresher for the Tampa Bay Lightning. 2015, 9 years ago, they go to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Chicago Blackhawks and lose. Stanley Cup Finals with Kucherov and Stamkos. That team, Ben Bishop, they lose to those Chicago Blackhawks, but they were there. 2016, they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they lose to the Pittsburgh Penguins, who then go on to win the Stanley Cup. 2 years where they lose to the Stanley Cup winners. They don't make it in 2017, but in 2018, they once again make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Who do they play in 2018? The Washington Capitals, who won the Stanley Cup. Then in 2019, they tie the regular season record. In 2019, of course, the historic, everyone remembers their sweep to the Columbus Blue Jackets, which is a whole story in and of itself. But still, the main note, regular season record. That's what they set that year. The year right after that, the bubble year, 2020, that dreaded year, they win the Stanley Cup against the Dallas Stars. 2021, they win the Stanley Cup again against the, that year's the one that was the year they beat Montreal. Yeah. And then 2022, 2 years ago, they lose to the Colorado Avalanche, who then won the Stanley Cup. This team, when they lose, except last season, where they go out in the first round against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So why did they lose in the first round, right? Why did they go from year after year either winning the Stanley Cup or losing to the team to win the Stanley Cup? What happened in that last season? I can tell you what. This team has played the most hockey out of any team in that span. And they've fought so hard, and it shows. Because when they win the Stanley Cup, it's not just they win the Stanley Cup, this isn't just, them just, making their way, year after year, year after year, they are going up and stacked against the hardest of teams, playing the best seasons, and just continuously, over and over and over again. That wear and tear, you can see at the end of the season last season, even though they finished second or third in the Atlantic Division, which is the most stacked division, you can tell that it was kind of catching up to them, especially the end of the season. If you remember when Braden Point, Stamkos, and Kucherov were all benched by John Cooper, and he was, you can tell that that just signs of just tiredness is showing upon them, right? Vasilevsky wasn't really Vasilevsky, and that series against Toronto was overall just a tough series to watch, because Tampa Bay, you can just tell, was not the Tampa that we know. But I feel like this team has gotten a little bit of rest because of their early out, and I think they're ready to go back in after not playing the hardest season ever to make it into the second place of the best division in the league. They're currently in the wild card place with 96 points, which is a pretty good number. It's pretty good in terms of most of the league. And they're going in this year, and my most likely guess is they play against the Boston Bruins in the first round. I think the Rangers will hold on to that spot. So going into it, let me remind you, once again, of who is on this team. First of all, Kucherov leads the league in points. Braden Point, 45 goal scorer this season, and is one of the best playoff performer guys in the league at the moment. Steven Stamkos, a veteran who can score goals, has been there and done that. I feel like I don't need to explain that to you. Hagel, Anthony Duclair, two guys who are fighters, not like fighters that scrappy like Kachuk, but guys who are solid like secondary guys, and guys like Anthony Duclair who was on the Panthers last season. They get bounced. Then he's playing on the San Jose Sharks this year, gets traded. He's been on fire in Tampa Bay. He's gonna be playing his heart out. Hey, Brandon Hagel, same thing, kind of very skilled, like just go at it kind of guy. Anthony Cirelli, a solid two-way centerman. Nick Paul. Where did I get? Is Anthony Paul someone? I don't know. Anyways, Nick Paul, like this team is stacked when it comes to offense. Maybe it's not much as other teams, but Kucherov, Point, Stamkos. I mean, this team is packed to the brim. Then defense, Hedman. Do I need to explain what Victor Hedman's so good for? Radish, underrated defenseman. Of course, I'm not saying like he's superstar or anything, but a solid defenseman in the back end of things that can hold his own, and people really overlook him. Guys like Perbeeks or like whatever, he's a fine defenseman, right? But then you get to Chernak, you get to Sergachev. They bring in Matt Dumba, right? This team has a lot of solid, uptight guys who have been there and done that, has won the Stanley Cup with this team. And sure, this team is not as good as they were when they won those back-to-back cups 3 years in a row, right? They have fallen off a little bit, but guys like Kucherov are still going. Guys like Braden Point, definitely still there. Hagel, Duclair. This team is loaded to the brim, and when it comes to certain matchups, I really like their odds. So and then, of course, do I need to remind you of Andrei Vasilevskiy? I know a lot of people are probably sour on him. People probably think he's a guy of the past. We got to move on to guys newer than him like Sorokin and Shesterkin. Vasilevskiy can still turn it on. And I have a feeling that from years past, of last season, of the year before that, if a team has a solid goaltender in net like Bobrovsky, like Andrei Vasilevskiy, that can solve a world of problems in the playoffs. And when you have a guy like Vasilevskiy who is regarded year after year, at least, unless you want to debate it, there is no debate that he is one of the best to ever do it. And to me, in like a singular occasion, he is probably the best goaltender of all time. And he is on this team with the rest of this loaded lineup, right? So the first round against the Boston Bruins, right? On paper, I'm guessing most people are going to look at this matchup kind of like the Florida Panthers last season and go, Boston wins. I mean, Boston, they set the record last season. They could potentially win the President's Trophy this year, not even face them. Whatever you want to say, right? The Boston Bruins, on paper, most people go like, yep, they win. But think about it. Last season, everyone thought that against the Panthers, except me. Guess what? The Bruins get bounced in the first round, right? It's interesting because you look at this team, you think of the Bruins, you're probably thinking like a very stacked team. They're so good in the playoff, two dominant goaltenders, good defense. Should be a pretty good shoo-in to win. But this season, the Tampa Bay Lightning have owned them 3-1 in the season series. Now, for me, personally, I don't ever really go off season series. Never. Like, you look in the past, I feel like every season series it has gone, like, the other way, which is not true. I'm just saying things that I want to believe. But, like, to me, I don't think it's that far of a stretch, right? You want to, like, compare, like, Pasternak. Sure, Pasternak to Kucherov, who's a better player, right? You want to compare Zacha and Coyle, like top two centermen, right? What about Point and Stamkos? Point or Cirelli? Whoever ends up being the centerman there would be Point and Cirelli. I don't know why I said Stamkos, right? I would pick Cirelli and Point over them, right? You want to pick like Marchand to Stamkos. I'd pick Stamkos. The defensive things is interesting because Coyle, like McAvoy to Hedman. You want to compare all those spots. I kind of lean towards the Lightning. Now, of course, playoffs is a team sport, and I don't know. I'm just saying, it is a little bit closer than most people think, and I personally think I might be leaning towards Tampa Bay, just because of how they were bounced out of the playoffs last year against a solid goaltender and Alex Lyon. This team has Vasilevskiy, and they've got a solid defense. They've got fighters who've been there and want to do it again. I kind of lean Tampa Bay at this very current moment. In a day, might change my mind. But right now, I'm kind of thinking Tampa Bay. But then once we get to the second round with Florida is where I'm like, okay, they're screwed. Florida, to me, is maybe the best team in the league. And right now, I would absolutely go, like, if you said pick a team to win that, I would say Florida beats Tampa Bay. But in an interstate rivalry like this between two dominant teams, as these two are, and also the added fact, like, sure, it's a couple years removed, but the Tampa Bay versus Florida series that we had a few years ago, where Florida was just atrocious against Tampa Bay. Sure, it is a completely different series than then, a completely different season, different teams, but at the same time, it's like that was supposed to be this really good game, this really good one-on-one, and Tampa just destroyed them. Like, what happens this year if they face each other? In a rivalry matchup like that, I think it can go either way. Either way it could go. And for me, like, Florida, they get bounced by Boston a couple years ago. Not Boston. They get bounced by, Tampa. They get bounced by Tampa a couple years ago when they won the President's Trophy. They get bounced by the Vegas Golden Knights last season after their Cinderella run. Cinderella runs happen every once in a while. The Panthers, you get the Blues in 2019. Right now, I just like Florida. I don't know. Could go either way. So let's say it goes either way and it goes in Game 7, Tampa wins it, right? Then you get to New York versus Carolina. And this is where I think things are. If they've gotten that far in the playoffs for Tampa, things must be going right. Kucherov is playing very good, getting points on the board. He's getting goals. He's definitely getting assists. Stamkos is pitching in. Braden Point is being the point guy that we know he is in the playoffs. And Vasilevsky's playing solid. To me, if they play up against one of these two teams in the finals, then things are going good for Tampa Bay, like the most ideal scenario for them. And to me, it's definitely not an obvious choice, right? Because if things are going right, I still would probably lean, especially towards New York. Like, Carolina is a maybe. Like, I feel like their top guys could definitely overcome Carolina's. So to me, it's like, who knows what happens, right? So let's say they get past them, Dallas and Vegas. Once again, if they get to that point, things are going right. But to me, there's so many ifs, if the defense is as solid as it could be. If Kucherov and the top guys are able to get around the defense and goaltending of the Bruins and overcome the offense of Florida, right? And Bobrovsky. There's so many ifs when it comes to Tampa Bay that if they do this, it would be, I don't want to say Cinderella story, because then it would make it seem like it is like this team is a underrated team, right? That one, like most people would say. They are not underrated, but there's so many ifs that even because if things go right in the first round against Boston, right? If things go right against Florida, if things go right in the Eastern Conference Final, I'm like, there's too many ifs. Like, sure, it could happen if it does in the Bruins, if it does work against the Panthers. But every single one of these teams, it gets harder and harder down the lineup, and wait, play against a team like Dallas or Vegas or the Avalanche, which I meant to put on the board, but I don't know where that went. If whoever they play against in that final, it's so many. If they do this, if Vasilevsky's is that good, if Hedman can shut down the top guys over and over again in the most scoring era, well, not the most scoring era, but as scoring has gone up in the NHL, I think they get overcome by a team like Florida, like the Rangers, like Carolina, maybe the Bruins. Once again, I'm kind of leaning right now Tampa Bay, but once again, it's like if they are thwarted by them, it wouldn't be a shock. So to me, Tampa Bay should not be wiped off the table as a potential contender. But so many things that have to go right for them, where if I look to a team in Florida when I make their video, it's not if Florida can do this. The question is, Florida can do this. Can an other team knock them down off of it, right? In Tampa Bay, it's if they can do that. So I know I've said it over and over again. So for me, Tampa Bay, I think they are good enough to have a shocking overcome of Boston, but then they get knocked off by a team in the second round. That is my prediction. So for me, that's all I got to say. So thank you for watching this. I know if you disagree with me, you're not going to be happy about Tampa Bay, but listen, I'm super optimistic about them. I love Tampa Bay. I used to live there. They used to be one of my top 3 teams. They still kind of are one of my more liked teams. But I just cannot think they are a Stanley Cup champion this year. But I think they get one win. I feel like this is a year where they get a series win, where then they go into the offseason and they try to keep the team together and revitalize it a little bit. Not revitalize it, but add a couple pieces and maybe go in next year for like that last hurrah, where before Stamkos is truly like out and Braden Point is like, this is his year. Kucherov, maybe this is the last season where he gets to like 100 and potentially 50 points. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. So thank you for watching this. If you've made it this far, please, I'm begging you, pick up your free subscription. And until next time, too sweet, have an amazing day, and ta-ta for now. Please subscribe. Please, I'm begging you.